Hello Internet, welcome back to our experimental Cataclysm. If you don't know, this is the show where we talk about a lot of the changes that have come to the experimental version of Cataclysm over the last couple of weeks. This week there's a lot of small things that I just want to quickly mention to let you know that they happened, as well as one pretty major change to the game. So first let's talk about something interesting. We had another article written about Cataclysm. This one was from NerdMuch, a website I've never heard of, but it's always nice when Cataclysm gets a little bit of attention. We had actually just talked about articles in a stream pretty recently, and then this one came out. It looks like they actually spoke to, with the ads, they actually spoke to Kevin directly, it seems like. So pretty interesting. I'm getting a lot of World of Warcraft ads. I guess, because I've been playing so much WoW. Let's just get this out of here. So there was an article written. There will be a link in the description down below, so check that out if you haven't already seen it. So that's one interesting thing that happened. Another interesting thing is that Korg has released another dev blog. So there will be a link to that also in the description, as well as hopefully a link up in the corner. And so Korg put out another dev blog. If you don't know, Korg is a developer on the dev team. He, he's done a lot for the game over the years. You probably know him best for Magicalism, as he's the creator of Magicalism. And there are going to be some of you who are like, Magicalism doesn't really affect me. I don't play with that mod. He's done other things, of course, in the game, but even just the stuff he did behind the scenes for Magicalism has improved the core game. So, for instance, for modders out there, or for anyone really, if you previously would make like a monster with a special attack or an item that had a special ability, those things were not very robust systems. It was very limited. With Magicalism, we can actually now attach spells directly to creatures. So it really opened up what kind of creature attacks you could have in the game, what kind of item effects there could be. So even that, Magicalism stuff that maybe you're not a fan of the mod, and I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the mod. I don't really like fantasy in my sci-fi, but that doesn't change that, those contributions affected the core game as well, and pretty significantly. So I know he's looking for GitHub sponsors, and, there have been people who watch my content who say, Murder, I want to support you. I want to give you a little bit of money because I want you to keep doing what you're doing. That's essentially what he is looking for, are people who recognize the work that he's done for the project and maybe can help financially support him. So there's also that. But of course, the dev blog on its own, you don't have to give him money. You can just go watch the video where he talks about what he's been working on lately. And just as a teaser, there's something called a corpse pocket. So maybe check that out. I thought that was really interesting. But it's always nice to hear from the dev team and see what their perspective is on things. So definitely check that out. There'll be a link in the description, and should have been a card that popped up on the screen. Also, a good time to mention that my breathing problems have been pretty out of control lately with the humidity. So if you hear me gasping for air, I apologize. Nothing I can do about that. So let's get into changes over the last week. First, I wanted to mention something from Code Bandit that is not going to affect the majority of you, but I have been wanting for a really long time, and that is a set all health from the debug menu. Previously, if I wanted to test, like when the healing changes came and I wanted to illustrate how healing has changed, I had to manually set every limb's health, constantly resetting everything one at a time, and it took forever. So I know this is simple and won't affect the average player, but my God, I was so excited when I saw this because it was one of the most tedious things I had to do for testing purposes. So really happy to see that. And just wanted to mention that because I really like that change. And we're going to try to move quickly through these this week. I don't have a ton of time, and most of them are very small anyway, so we're just going to run through some things. First, heavy and long stick references have been changed to Stout Branch. You may have seen this already. There are no longer heavy sticks and long sticks. They have been changed to Stout Branch and Long Stout Branch, which are things that you will now find when you smash saplings, things like that. Pretty small change overall, mostly just a description and name change. But I just wanted to let people know because I saw a Stout Branch and was like, I don't know what that is. So that's been changed. Really not anything to report majorly there. Next, also from WAP Caplet, I think I failed to mention that the last one was WAP Caplet. So from WAP Caplet, we have, you can now lockpick doors with E if prying is not available. So previously there were two types of doors in Cataclysm, and doors could only have one action assigned to them. So you could either press the E key to quickly pry a door open. If it was like the standard wood door you would find on houses, it would only try to pry, it would not try to lockpick. Now, you should be able to do both. So if you examine a door with the lowercase e key and you don't have a crowbar, you should still be able to lockpick the door, and it will automatically do that. So this is a nice quality of life change, because previously there was really no way to know which doors were lockpickable versus prying, and which one would use which auto use action. So it's been combined, it looks like, and you can now do both. So really, really nice, minor, I mean, it's relatively minor quality of life change, but it is a quality of life change nonetheless. Next, from Urk, of course, we got an update to the Ultica tile set that is comes with Cataclysm. So if you haven't checked out Ultica, it's a pretty cool tile set. I'm looking forward to the day when it's a little bit more complete, and I plan to shift to this because I don't really like, well, it's a whole thing. So Ultica is the tile set. It's included with Cataclysm, and it's getting more and more complete as they progress. This is the first update in about 3 months, and it's just nice to see the tile set getting updated. I think this is based on Ultima, right? It doesn't say. Pretty sure Ultima is where it gets its name, and it does have that vibe to it. So these are some screenshots if you haven't seen it before. Pretty promising. I'm looking forward to the day when I can flip that switch and not have all these broken tiles, you know. It's just rough with recording, you know, you want a very complete tile set, something that's graphically appealing, and these broken tiles really turn people off. So I'm hoping, you know, as the game progresses, as this tile set progresses, I do plan to shift, and I think it looks great. And if you haven't checked out Ultica, you should definitely check that out. Next, we've had from Lamandus, we've had artificial sweeteners added to the game. This is not a super big deal, but it did change quite a lot of recipes to include artificial sweetener in lieu of sugar. So now instead of having just a sugar line, it will have an artificial sweetener line. It looks like they manually did this. It probably, what doesn't matter? There's probably a better way to do this where you just combine sweeteners into one category and then slap that recipe, you know, slap that in the recipe. But yeah, lots of recipes have been updated to use artificial sweeteners, which you should now be finding in the game. So pretty cool, pretty minor, but also pretty interesting in case you want to live the sugar-free life. In fact, that would be an interesting trait, is to add a sugar-free trait where you could not consume sugar and would have to seek out artificial sweeteners. That'd be pretty restrictive, given that 99% of all food nowadays seems to contain sugar, but you know, it would be an interesting concept. Next, also from Lamandus, we have added green tea, fruit tea, and turned regular tea into black tea. If you're a tea drinker, you probably know what all that means. If you're not a tea drinker, it's basically just there are lots of types of tea in the world. Most of them are black tea, so like it makes sense that the generic tea was converted to black tea. But yeah, just expanded tea. Tea is the supreme drink in the world. I don't know why people drink coffee or to feel disgusting water. You should be drinking tea. So just, you know, more tea expansion. We've actually seen quite a bit of expansion with tea over the last couple of weeks. You know, with just like chamomile was added pretty recently as well. So, you know, just more variety to tea. I really believe in variety. I think variety really is the spice of life, and you get tired of seeing the same items over and over and over in Cataclysm. So any amount of diversity, even if it's just something granular like separating teas into multiple types, I really like that. And I thought that this deserved a mention because tea is amazing. Next, speaking of Korg, we have Korg's Pocket Favorites, which is an ability that lets you favorite pockets and essentially determine what does and does not go into your pockets. I actually did not look at how you do this. Pocket auto pickup settings, I would imagine, because that looks to be new. Okay. Select the item in your inventory, open, quote, Pocket Favorite Settings. Select which pocket to adjust. The UI list will show current pocket data, what's inside, and the current pocket settings, as well as some hotkeys that let you change things. So for instance, you can go by category. You can toggle a whitelist or blacklist, which I assume lets you use that on an item-specific level. So it's like let's say I'm wearing a pair of jeans and I'm tired of it putting lighters in my jeans. I would rather keep them in my pack for some reason. I could blacklist lighters so that they would not show up in my pocket. They would go instead into a different pocket. So it's interesting. I think this is a good change because we're struggling with keeping our large pockets open for large items. So it already defaults pretty intelligently into like smaller pockets and where things should go. But I am noticing some issues with that, and I think the whitelist, blacklist situation will make it much easier to specify what goes where. It is unfortunately a pretty small, not small, it's pretty technical in that it's going to require some micromanagement, which I don't love. I think we have a lot already in Cataclysm. It's a really complex game. So I think micromanagement is something that turns people off, but I think this was necessary and is a good change. Well, as soon as Pockets started, people started saying, hey, I don't like that my insert item goes into insert storage container. I would like more control over that. And that's exactly what this does. So you'll have to play with it. I have not played with it yet. I suppose I probably should have opened the game and fooled around with this a bit, but it seems pretty intuitive. So if that becomes like a really complicated thing, we'll probably do a tutorial on it. I plan to do a tutorial on nested containers as it is. It's just I'm waiting for them kind of to settle out. So probably closer to like when 0.f starts to come, then I will make a tutorial about nested containers. It's something people ask me about quite a lot. In fact, why don't we take a moment to discuss the current state of nested containers in Cataclysm? It's the single thing that I get asked the most about, like, what is the current, hey, Murder, I'm concerned about updating. What's it like right now? Should I update? Should I not update? Has this been fixed? Has that been fixed? So let's just talk about some of this really quick. So I'll jump right into it. First and foremost, should you update? Probably not. If you're the kind of person who's asking that question, you probably are going to be frustrated by the number of bugs and the small inconsistencies and issues that you will have. If you're even concerned about it, then you probably shouldn't update because you're probably going to be frustrated. If you don't really care, yeah, absolutely, update. You might as well start playing with the Pocket system. You might as well start learning the settings and all this, all the stuff that's involved with it. But if you're someone who's annoyed by small bugs, then no, of course not. It's going to frustrate you. There's nothing, as far as I know, there's nothing that's like going to delete your save. There's no seg faults that are really an issue. Most of that stuff has been worked out. I do still seg fault occasionally, but I don't actually think it's connected to nested containers. I think that was a hub issue. So as far as I know, nested containers is not going to destroy your save game. It's not going to ruin your life, but it is going to annoy you. And specifically, there are a few things that really get to me. They're very small, but they are constant, and it is obnoxious. So for instance, oh, my puppers are crying. My family must be home. It's about that time. For instance, length is an issue. All items have now been given a length, and most of them are placeholder values. So currently, lots of things, like most guns, have a 5-inch length. So they're 5 inches of gun, which is silly small. And that, of course, is being rectified constantly. I think, in fact, Levian Fiend said that they were working on gun sizes at the moment. That might have been someone else. I know they've already addressed blunt weapons and some other items in the game, but there's still a lot that's not quite fixed yet. But because items now have a length, some items are too big to put in containers, because containers have pockets. Most of them aren't single large pockets. Most of them are smaller pockets. So if you pick up, let's say, a plank, turns out a plank is like 4 feet long, which is much bigger than I expected it to be, and it will not fit, as far as I know, in any container that's in the game right now. So that is a continuing issue that is pretty recently introduced, but is definitely an issue with the Pocket system at the moment. For instance, my character in my current Let's Play is using a mace, which will not fit in any container I have. So even if I want to pick up something relatively innocuous, a lot of times that requires your hands to be free, which will force me to drop the mace on the ground. It's small, and it's not that big of a deal, but it is extremely annoying. So in addition to length, there's also things that are not being sorted, so anything inside of a container will not work with the current sorting system in the game. So for instance, you can set up a sorting zone for food and drink and containers, and then if you try to sort out your food that is in containers, it will put them in the container pile and not in the food pile. Even if you don't have a container pile, those items are not being treated as food and drink, so you can't sort food and drink by the sorting system. You have to do it manually. This is, again, a small issue that's not that big of a deal, but it is a continual annoyance. There's also color coding issues. So if you try to eat food that is in a container, it will not always color code correctly. So sometimes it will not show you your food allergies, which are normally color coded red. And sometimes rotten food is not being color coded as brown. Again, it's just a quality of life thing that has gone down since containers started. And then finally, a lot of cans are being spawned as open. I've been told repeatedly that this was fixed, but in every game I start, even a game I recently started fresh, the cans are still being treated as open. Beer in particular seems to all be open, cat food, things like that. So it's leading to a lot of food and drink being rotten, even though, and you can't pick up cans that are currently open. So you have no way of transporting them unless you drop your weapon and carry it in your hands. So those are the 4 things that I consider the biggest issues at the moment in nested containers. And honestly, those are very small things. They're just annoying. They're not game breaking. They don't destroy my ability to play the game, but they are a continual annoyance. There are also some errors that will pop up when you play the game saying such and such can't be contained or whatever. But these are all very minor issues, and I think overall it's a very playable system, and I really like the nested container changes. So for all of you out there who are asking, can you update? It's definitely a personal assessment, but if you're easily annoyed, no, I would not recommend you update. But if you can tolerate like the things I just mentioned, which are very small things, then absolutely update. It's a cool new system. I'm excited that it's being worked on and fixed. People are working all the time. Like Korg obviously just implemented this. This wasn't a bug fix, but I happen to know he was working on some serious bug fixes, the major issues that came from the system. Like I said, Levian Fiend and other members of the community are working to get the length thing under control. People are working every day to make pockets even better than they already are. So yeah, I would encourage you to check it out. I would encourage you to update if you can tolerate some annoyance. Anyway, let's move on. We spent too much time talking about that, but I know a lot of people are interested. People keep asking about this, and I know that a lot of you are concerned. Let's get back to quick. Remember I said I was going to be quick? I guess that was a lie. So we recently have filing in the game now. Filing quality has been added to the game. And Xenomorph here has added Sandpaper, which is a low tier filing quality. Filing 1, which is basic. Of course, it's going to show up in houses and workshops. We're starting to get more workshop sheds and basements and things. So I imagine it will make an appearance there. And I don't really know what you need filing for at the moment. I don't really think anything, but that will probably change in the future. So keep an eye out for Sandpaper. Next, you can now escape grabs and some traps while waiting. This is also from Code Bandit. Previously, in order to, like, let's say you get grabbed by an enemy, in order to break that grab, you had to select a movement direction and try to move free of the grab. You now have the ability to wait in place while trying to break grabs. Whenever you're not doing something and you're just waiting, it will try to break that grab. This apparently also applies to bear traps, although I don't think I have ever seen one deployed in the game. So if you, I don't know. I was going to say if you get trapped in a bear trap, it's your own fault, but, I don't know. This applies also to when you're downed, snares, trapped in rubble, or in webs. So this is a pretty nice change in my opinion. It's a very small thing, but I like it because previously I would just mash a movement button and then often not pay attention to when I got out of the grab, and I would actually step away when I didn't mean to. So now I have the option to just wait in place. I think it's a good change, albeit a small one. Next, from Martin Arhan, we have the enable a mouse input for inventory. I did mean to open the game for this one, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, I know that I'm a filthy casual and most of you don't feel this way, but I enjoy playing games entirely with my mouse. I don't think that it fits for Cataclysm. Cataclysm is a pretty in-depth game that has a lot of controls that need to be mapped to keys. However, we already have a lot of mouse functionality. I can look with my mouse. Here I am at Isherwood Farms. We can look at with our mouse. We can select tiles with our mouse. We can move with our mouse. Things like that are already implemented in the game. Unfortunately, I thought maybe I could scroll in and out to zoom, but that doesn't look like that's the case. So there's some things that you can do with the mouse already. Now we have the ability to interact with our inventory using the mouse. So for instance, I'm looking for a grappling hook. I can now click the grappling hook and it will take me into my inventory and show me that item. Unfortunately, that is where the functionality ends. I can't actually click any of these options in the menu, and I can't back out of this menu using my mouse. So there's a lot to be desired, but we can now click items in our inventory in order to see them. This only functions in our inventory. If we drop, we can drop something, horse tack, sure, and you'll see it allows us to select them. And unfortunately, there's no way to finalize this, apparently. You have to hit enter in order to drop things. So it's extremely limited at the moment, but it hints at maybe they're going to do some more work to make this fully, actionable with our mouse. So I could click this Marshal badge and I could click drop if I was so inclined. So it's a small thing, but for those of you who don't know, I have a brother with some physical limitations, and he is very much limited to only one hand. So for him, gaming with one hand has always been extremely difficult. And Cataclysm is definitely a game that is a bit beyond his mental capacity. He also has some mental limitations. But I really like when I see games going in a direction that supports people with some limitations and makes games playable. Like, I'm pretty sure you can play NetHack entirely while, if you're blind, I believe they have an audio set up for NetHack so that you could actually play as a blind person. And I really like games that encourage people with limitations to be able to play their games, to add that accessibility. That's really, I don't know all the language, like I said, my brother has some stuff going on. We always use the term limitations. I don't know if that's offensive or not, but like, I love when games take a step like that they don't have to take, right? Because they could complete how many video games completely ignore that entire group of people. And this helps with that. And I'm sure they weren't thinking like, oh, this will make it accessible for people with one hand. They probably weren't thinking that at all. But I love anything that moves in that direction. So I think this is really cool. I really wanted to shout that out because I think that's, and like I said, I'm sure it's just for people like me who are casual and just want to sit back in their chair and just use their mouse to play, that kind of thing. But like, I just love this stuff. So, it's thanks for that. I really like that. So I just wanted to shout that out. So thanks to Martin Arhan for that. Next, we have the ability to stop bleeding, disinfect wounds, and inject antibiotics in case of infected wound or tetanus. And it adds all this ability to the Autodoc. I love this. This is from Knight. I love this change. For a long time, Autodocs were severely limited in what they were able to do. Essentially, it was set broken bones or deal with CBMs. And I've always felt like, man, the Autodoc could use a little bit more diversity. And now that they're working on the wound system and like the self-treatment, self-care items that are going to be added to the game and systems that are being worked on in the game, and we've talked about that, about them expanding the wound system and things, it just makes sense that this would go on the Autodoc. So I really like this. I have not played with it, but it looks like it has a wide variety of new abilities, like disinfecting and things like that, which makes sense that a pre-constructed, pre-cataclysm, chair that is an Autodoc, it's meant to do surgery and things on human beings, would have the basic ability like disinfecting, applying antibiotics, stopping bleeding. All that stuff makes sense in the confines of a surgical robot, essentially. So I think that's really cool, and I really, really like this change, so I thought I would shout it out. Next from Ember, we have new content for mutated insects. What this appears to do is, I believe it changes the name or the descriptions on mutant meat, as well as changing animal drops. So like the wasp, didn't I just see that? The wasp stingers and things like that. And yeah, change the descriptions on mutant meats, as well as changing what you can harvest from bugs. So you may have noticed endochitin popping up over the last couple of weeks in lieu of like the old chitin that we would see a lot of. I think the old chitin is chitin piece, and endochitin is the new item. I'm not 100% on what these different things are or what they will be used for, but there have been some reshaping, has been some reshaping of, the mutant insects and things that we'll see. And we'll see how that develops as we go, because I don't really think there's a use for endochitin at the moment. I could be completely wrong about that. I've only seen it a few times in game, and I haven't actually looked for the recipes. So yeah, just wanted to point out there's been some changes to mutated insects. Next, for wilderness starts from Syrops, we had some changes to the wilderness scenario, which now allows you to start on a deserted island. Now, we had islands in the game already, but I believe that they would spawn with furniture and some things like that. Oh, in fact, a lake cabin, but that's obviously not a deserted island. So this just adds the ability for you who want to start and play in the wilderness. You can now start on a desert island. Seems like it would be fun. Everyone should take at least one playthrough where they kind of build a boat and go from there. And I would also encourage people, if you haven't played, check out a wilderness playthrough. I don't find them very fun, but it's something you should try at least once in Cataclysm. Next, we have a new side mission for Hub 01. So yeah, spoilers and all that jazz. And basically there is a mercenary that needs you to help them clear the nearby radio tower from a leech bloom. Now, I don't know what any of that really means. And there are apparently some crashes when you return to the hub. I did notice I was seg faulting at the hub occasionally. I don't know if that's entirely this thing's fault, but it happens. And then, yeah, it's just cool. I just covered the hub main missions in a series on my channel, and I'm excited to do the new side quest. I haven't looked at it at all. I don't love doing a lot of spoiler stuff, so I don't really know what a leech bloom is. I don't want to spoil those monsters in a, experimental Cataclysm video. But yeah, it's cool. I love seeing expansions of these kind of missions. I didn't before. I used to not really care about NPCs or factions at all. But since I've been doing some of the missions in my NPC mission guide tutorials, I really think they're cool. I think there's some people have been working. I know Candleberry did work on Hub 01. Did he make all of the missions and the faction? I know he worked on Mission 3 for sure. He recently added Mission 3. But yeah, I like seeing stuff like this. And I had someone complain. They were like, oh, I don't support static missions in Cataclysm. There should be no static NPCs. It's like, I don't know if I agree. How else are you going to tell the story of the Cataclysm if you don't put in factions and stuff like that? Whatever. Anyway, yeah, Hub 01 expanded mission. Pretty cool. And then we're down to the final two changes, and these are the hefty ones. Not this one so much, but the next one's a pretty dang big deal. So this is from Lyle SY. I believe that's the individual who's currently maintaining the Dino mod, which if you have not checked out Dino mods, pretty interesting. So you should definitely play with that sometime as well. But this adds some animal upgrades, specifically zombie versions of animals. So there are 2 new Zombear upgrades, 2 new Antlered Horror upgrades, which are the upgraded moose, I believe, and 2 new Pouncer upgrades, which is like the cougar zombie. Each monster gets its own upgrade group, and each upgrades into its group. So it's mostly just an expansion on the upgraded versions of these zombie creatures. I like this. I think this is cool, and it looks like they maybe have some ideas about expanding other ones as well, which I think would be interesting. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's cool. Honestly, it's pretty rare I see zombie animals in the game, but I have a feeling that's going to be changing thanks to this next change. And finally, from Frizz, my favorite change this week, by far the most impactful of the things that I've already talked about. Any corpse can rise again as a zombie, and this is pretty freaking cool. Previously, if you killed a zombie, they came back to life, but if you killed a human, they didn't come back. You killed an animal, they didn't come back. And it never really made sense. I don't know the exact lore on Cataclysm. I can't tell you, like, is it connected to the biomass of the creature? Is it brain size? I don't know how that works. But it makes sense to me that animals should be reviving as well. And that's exactly what this thing lets you do. And now, if you kill an animal, so I use undead people, there's a little red skull icon that indicates the corpse was not pulped. And now that appears on animals as well, so you know they will be revived. Specifically, I killed some wolves that had that indicator, and I assume they would revive as the zombie wolf or Zol. What are they? Those are, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it should come back as the zombified version of itself. So, for instance, spawn a generic corpse, killed a moose, a black bear, a cougar, and a beaver, wait, and the corpses respawn as the appropriate zombies. Now, I don't know the time frame on the resurrection. I think for zombies it's like 6 hours, but I could completely be wrong about that. That's something it never matters. You pulp them pretty much immediately. But this, could be an issue if you go on like a long tangent of butchering a lot of corpses at once. You might find that these zombies are being resurrected. And then, of course, they need to be pulped, so smashing them will stop this revivification process. That's a tough word for me. And then finally, the NPCs have been they will now pulp the animal corpses as well. And I don't know what Dark Skies Above is, but it's pretty cool. Currently, it only applies to zombie creatures or animals that have a zombie variant. So, like, I don't think your generic, let's say you kill Beagle in the game, I don't think the Beagle has a zombie counterpart. There's no, oh, actually, they do have zombie dogs, don't they? So maybe they do. It looks like it's the Zombear, the Zombeaver, the Zombie Cougar, Zombie Moose, Zombie Pig, Zombie Wolf, and that seems to be it. So those seem to be the ones that have been added now. But yeah, I would love to see the generic dog species convert into their skeletal dogs or zombie whatever dogs that are in the game, because we do have those particular creatures set up as zombie forms. I would like to see, all animals get a zombie variant. Why not have zombie bunnies in the game and things like that? I don't know the lore, so maybe like squirrels and cats and stuff might be too small for the reanimation process. But I think this is so cool, and there's so much potential here to like really reshape, like just the simple addition of these dozens of different like zombie version of animals. I think that would add a lot to the game. I think it's so cool. I mean, maybe I'm too excited about it, but I think this is a really cool change, and it's going to open up a lot of potential for people to mod stuff in. It's going to open up potential for people to contribute to the game. If you're listening to this right now and you've never contributed, this is not a terrible place to start. You could start by making a zombie variant of an animal that already exists, and it would be relatively easy to copy and paste essentially and change some values. So I really like this. I wanted to shout this out because it's a pretty big change. Like I said, the only issues I can foresee is if you, let's say you go to a farm and you kill a bunch of, sheep, and they add zombie sheep to the game, then those sheep are going to reanimate. And if you're trying to butcher, 10 corpses over time, you might take too long and they might resurrect. But the odds of that happening are very small. You'd have to butcher for a really long time. I can't really see people doing that. You generally would do it right away anyway to keep the meat fresh and everything. But that's like the only thing I can think of that's like negative about this. Obviously, pulping corpses generally gives you less when you butcher them, so I would recommend, not pulping a corpse you plan to butcher for meat. But like, I just love this, man. I think this is so good. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here, because it's going to continue development. I imagine people will start adding other zombie animals to the game, and I just love that. I love when new monsters get added to the game. I love because it's such a basic thing that a lot of people think is super hard. Oh, I can't add something to the game. I can't contribute to the game. But this is a relatively easy thing that you just figure out and you can contribute. And I just am excited to see, if anyone steps up and really works on this. I don't know. I've rambled about it enough. It's a good change in my opinion. I know some people are not going to like it because some people hate change, but it's my favorite thing this week, and I wanted to give it a loud shout out about how much I like it. So I think that's a wrap on the episode. So for now, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode of Experimental Cataclysm. I've also been streaming on Twitch 2 days a week. Tuesday and Thursday are my Cataclysm days, and I try to stream a little bit more than that with some whatever game I want to play, but those are my Cataclysm days. Come out, say hello. Even if you can't stay, I really enjoy talking with the community, and I think it's really helped my particular content because I now have people to interact with. So that's a wrap. Everybody, thanks for coming out. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and I'll be back in a couple weeks. So I'll see you in the next episode.